Alrighty, hello and welcome. Before we jump right into the English topics for today, I just want to show you where everything will be organized. So in our Google Classroom, underneath classwork, you will find the title Short Stories. This is where everything related to short stories will be posted. The terms and definitions that I'll be talking about today and throughout the term are all in this one presentation, and you already have the link to them. Today, you'll be using this document for your story arc diagram practice, and for homework, you'll be reading this story. If you're ever confused or want to find something related to the unit we are currently studying, it'll be here in Short Stories in Google Classroom. So jumping right over into our terms and definitions, today we'll be looking at story arc, otherwise known as a plot diagram. For some of you, this will be new. For some of you, it's review. So perhaps a drawing like this is somewhat familiar to you. A story arc or a plot diagram is a device that helps us map out the events that happen in most stories. Does it fit every story perfectly? No, but it does fit most stories. So the exposition or stasis, otherwise known as the beginning, is the introduction to a story. So it tells us the characters, so who's in the story, and then it tells us the setting. Where does the story take place? The turning point is the first major important event. It'll usually introduce some conflict into the story, and it will change the direction of the characters' lives. A good way to know the turning point is that if you were to take it out of the story, would the story have happened at all? And if the answer is no, then that would be the turning point. If you're worried that there might be two turning points in a story, you should go with the first one, because probably the second turning point wouldn't have happened if that first turning point hadn't have happened. And then we have the rising action, where our events are building up. And then we have the climax. This is the biggest, most important event of the story. This is usually where our main conflict gets resolved. It's usually the biggest point of action or interest in a story. A good way to know the climax is that in the falling action and in the resolution, there is no conflict. There is no new fight scene. There is no new interest introduced. There is no conflict whatsoever in the falling action or the resolution. That's how you know the climax has happened, because nothing that interesting is going to happen afterwards. The climax usually happens about 80 to 90% of the way through a story. Sometimes it happens right at the end of a story. Most of your story takes place on this side of your story arc. So don't think that the climax has to happen about halfway through because it's halfway through the diagram. It usually happens more towards the end, and some stories might lack a falling action or resolution, or sometimes they are one and the same because they can happen so quickly. So watch the next video in the playlist entitled Pip, and then we will plot the story arc for that story together in the next video. Thanks.